You don't have to go far to find out the true meaning of Easter. In fact, if you look up Easter in a Webster's dictionary, the first line will say, Easter is the name of an old Teutonic goddess of spring. Today, Easter is celebrated on the first Sunday on or after the first full moon that follows the vernal equinox. Around the world, various pagan rituals were exercised in celebration of the return of the sun. In Germany, for example, they worshipped Ostara, the Germanic fertility goddess, on this day. The English word for Easter was derived from her name. Let's look at some of the symbols that are associated with Easter today. The Easter bunny is not a modern invention. The symbol originated with the pagan festival of Ysteri. The goddess Ysteri was worshipped by the Anglo-Saxons through her earthly symbol, the rabbit. And what about Easter eggs? The Druids used the egg as the sacred emblem of their order. In China, dyed or painted eggs are used on sacred heathen festivals. In the idolatry of ancient Egypt and Greece, eggs were used in their religious rites. And the list goes on and on. There is no doubt that this celebration has pagan roots. But can we find Easter in the Bible? Turn in your King James Bible to Acts 12, 1-4. Verse 1. Now about that time Herod the king stretched forth his hands to vex certain of the church, and he killed James, the brother of John, with the sword. And because he saw it pleased the Jews, he proceeded further to take Peter also. Then were the days of unleavened bread. And when he had apprehended him, he put him in prison, and delivered him to the 4 quaternions of soldiers to keep him, intending after Easter to bring him forth to the people. There in verse 4, the most evil Herod waited until his pagan celebration of Easter to deliver Peter to the people. Now if Herod is celebrating Easter, do you think you should be? Some say that the word Easter in this verse is mistranslated and that it should say Passover. This is not true, and I can prove it with Scripture. If you look in verse 3, the Bible tells us that during this time it was the days of unleavened bread. Let's read Numbers 28, 16, and 17. And in the 14th day of the first month is the Passover of the Lord. And in the 15th day of this month is the feast. 7 days shall unleavened bread be eaten. According to Scripture, if it is the days of unleavened bread, then the Passover has already taken place. If this verse was mistranslated, then Herod would be keeping Peter for an entire year. The King James is the only Bible that gets this right. Go ahead and look it up for yourself. Here's a quote from Alexander Hislop from his book, The Two Babylons. The term Easter is of pagan origin. It bears its Chaldean origin on its very forehead. Easter is nothing else than Astarte, one of the titles of Beltis, the Queen of Heaven. This is the celebration that Herod was keeping. Why would he care anything about the Jewish Passover?
In the Northern Hemisphere during late December, the days are at their shortest lengths and the nights are at their longest. For those of the pagan world, this has always been the greatest time of the year to celebrate and practice the works of darkness. The pagan calendar identifies this period as the winter solstice. It was during the pre-Christian midwinter pagan celebrations of Scandinavia's Norsemen where today's Christmas traditions began. As a means of honoring the pagan sex and fertility god Yule, a 12-day celebration during the month of December was inaugurated. A large single log considered to be a phallic idol was lit on fire and kept burning for 12 days. Animal or human sacrifices were offered in the fire on each of those days. Wild, delirious reveling accompanied the daily sacrifices as drunken participants defiantly strove to make contact with spirits.
In Germany, the pagan god Odin lent his name to this midwinter holiday. Early Germans were terrified of Odin, whose nocturnal flights decided who would prosper or perish in the coming year. Later, we'd see another Christmas sky rider, Santa Claus. But for now, staying inside became the smartest choice at this frightening time of the year.
In pre-Christian Rome, celebrants were paying homage to their own gods during the winter solstice. Witchcraft traditions hold that a number of pagan gods were given birth during this period, including Dionysus, Attis, and Baal, chief male god of fertility and licentiousness. Another pagan god from Persia, identified as Mithra, was said to have been born specifically on December 25th. Mithra was the god of the unconquerable sun, the god of the light between heaven and earth, worshipped at that time by an influential Roman cult. His birth symbolized an end to the long nights and a return to the dominance of the sun. By 270 AD, the Roman Emperor Aurelian had made it official, setting aside a 7-day period from December the 17th through the 24th, culminating in an exchange of gifts on December the 25th to celebrate the birth of the sun god. This Roman orgy to end all orgies later became known as Saturnalia, in honor of the god Saturn, the god of excess.
By the 4th century, the church made it official. December 25th was declared the feast day of the Nativity.
It was hoped that the pagan celebrations of Saturnalia would merge into this new legally sanctioned form of Christianity. The Church's practice of changing the dates of Christian events to coincide with pagan festivals continued, and by the 7th century, Pope Gregory I had ordered Augustine of Canterbury to incorporate any and all pagan practices and customs into the expanding Roman Catholic Church. During the Middle Ages, the debased Mardi Gras atmosphere of what was now known as Christ's Mass had reached a fevered pitch. Common practices included open sex in the streets, rioting, murder, and a number of pagan druidic Halloween rituals. This blood-drenched celebration got so out of hand that by 1652, following the execution of King Charles I, Christ's Mass was finally outlawed in England. A religious reform movement began sweeping the country, led by Puritan Oliver Cromwell. The Puritans took the biblical mandate seriously, which commanded that Christianity remain pure and separate from paganism. Despite their noble efforts, the celebration simply went underground, and by 1656, after only 4 short years under the ban, the public's demand for the legalization of Christ's Mass had become insurmountable. The appointment of Charles II to the throne restored England's monarchy, and with it the celebration of Christ's Mass.
Game over.